show I've got a preview of the Nokia 9300i smartphone, a review of the T-Mobile MDA Pro, aka the Universal, and a hands-on real-world demo and review of TomTom MOBILE 5 for Symbian and Windows Mobile smartphones. I wanted to start show number 3 with a preview of the Nokia 9300i smartphone. You'll remember the 9500 from program number 1, big clamshell communicator. The 9300i is very similar, but smaller. Same idea. Now, the eagle-eyed among you might spot this is actually the original 9300, not the i model. That's because the i model is just too new and we haven't got it yet. The colour scheme is different, and under the hood there's a Wi-Fi radio, but that's basically all that's different on the hardware side. Putting the two side by side, you can see that the keyboard isn't that much smaller on the 9300i. The key travels somewhat less, so it will be harder to type on, and the joystick is flush with the keyboard, which can be a bit fiddly to use. But it's almost as usable, and the screen's not that much smaller. What is smaller is the closed size. That looks a whole lot more palatable as for use as a phone than the original 9500. Also, which may be of interest to some, it folds flat, so you can put it flat on the desk and type away and sit more or less on top of it. So, looking at the changes from the 9300, which this is of course, to the 9300i, which is the one coming up. In terms of software, there's now T9 support for the cover phone, so you can reply to messages very quickly on the cover phone if you want to, if you don't fancy opening up the clamshell. In terms of the clamshell software, it's pretty standard Series 80, which is Nokia's keyboarded interface, and as with the 9500, switching applications is virtually instantaneous once they're running. The multitasking works very well indeed with the list of running programs down on the left-hand menu card. Adding Wi-Fi into the original 9300 concept was a great idea, of course. Now on a device this size, you can do full VGA width browsing over your company's Wi-Fi network or at a Wi-Fi hotspot. And in time, of course, there'll be some kind of voice over IP client, so you can make phone calls for free over Wi-Fi and not through the traditional telephony. Also, in terms of software, Nokia have taken on board the current demand for push email. The standard messaging client built in can handle POP3 and IMAP4 email as on the 9500, but to this they've added extra viewers and extra integration for things like 7 Always On Mail, Nokia Business Center, Visto, BlackBerry Connect, and so on. A lot of the applications they supply with the 9300i will be trial versions, but then you're not going to implement that as a consumer. This is for companies who are going to roll it out to all their professionals, integrating with the company's email system. So in summary, if you can live without the 9500's camera, or indeed live without a camera at all, and if you can put up with the slightly hard keyboard and the slightly fiddly joystick, this is an excellent all-purpose communications device. One final plug is something just sent to me by my friends at Brando. It's an aluminium machined hard case for the 9300 and 9300i. Because the 9300i folds flat, there's this extra hinged section. So in closed mode you can use the cover phone, and it is absolutely bomb-proof in terms of driving cars over it, knocking nails in with it and so forth. And most importantly, you can use it in situ, with the bottom of the case hinging away, and you use it even flat on a desk. Now, Brando aren't a sponsor of the show yet, but I just thought that was worth mentioning. It looks a bit ugly, but for a business person who wants their phone to stay rock solid and protected, that's not bad. Like the MDA Vario, which we looked at in Program 1, the MDA Pro is made by HTC, again, this time codenamed the Universal. Also rebadged as the O2, XD Exec, the Vodafone VPA4, the Orange M5000 and so on. It's very innovative, but it does suffer from the form factor chosen. It's huge, with squarish dimensions of 130 by 80 mm. It weighs 285 grams. 30% heavier than its nearest competitor, the year-old Nokia 9500. This is one communicator you're really not going to want to put to your ear. As with the 9500 though, there's a reason for the weight and the size. Opening up the MDA Pro reveals a large, for a handheld computer, VGA display and a full QWERTY keyboard.
including a row of number keys and application shortcuts. The key action isn't as good as on the Nokia 9500 in my opinion. Each key press operates a micro switch rather than a membrane keyboard, and pressing a key sounds an annoying mechanical click. Add in a few strange key placements, for example the full stop and the comma being separated either side of the up arrow key, and a spacebar with two micro switches leading to double spaces in text, and typing somehow seems more of a chore than it should. The backspace key is in line with one of the rows of letters, which is annoying, but at least it's a different size to the enter key, which is a problem seen on the some other handhelds we've seen recently. The main feature of the universal design, of course, is that the screen rotates through a full 180 degrees before folding back on the keyboard to yield a traditional looking, although still huge, stylus-driven pocket PC. In this mode, the call and hang up buttons available on the spine and the front face navigator key are the only real hardware buttons you've got, so you can't use the left-right function assignments as used in most Windows Mobile 5 programs. In truth, this PDA mode is something of a gimmick, and most users will stick to the traditional clamshell laptop arrangement, in which there's at least some benefit to be had from the form factor. Expansions by SD card with a slot in the left-hand side of the clamshell. One final comment about the hardware is that there's a row of buttons along the front edge assigned to various applications. These are incredibly easy to hit by mistake. Every time you pick the thing up, you press one of them. We found this out after launching voice speed dial by mistake for the umpteenth time. On the software front, it's Windows Mobile 5.0 again, with all its benefits and concerns, such as the bizarre start program grouping. Look at some of these groups. You've got two icons in each group, one of which you're going to use once in a blue moon. What is the point in that? Again with messaging. A wizard and then the real messaging. The interface is inconsistent in places too. Sometimes I found myself with an OK button on screen, a cross in the top right, there's the enter key on the keyboard and also an OK key on the keyboard, and quite what they all do is really much of a mystery, and sometimes I'm surprised by what happens. This being a communicator with VGA screen and full keyboard, extra value can be placed on the mobile versions of Microsoft's Office applications, PowerPoint Mobile, Excel Mobile and Word Mobile. As with the Nokia 9500 a year earlier, the MDA Pro will be able to replace a laptop for some business users, providing there's not too much text to be typed in. Remember, this is a microswitch keyboard, not a membrane version. With the extra functionality does come extra responsibility and expectancy though. When you round-trip documents, you will lose some advanced structure and formatting, and this may be a problem in the business environment. I also didn't like that for such a high-end communicator that there's no way of quickly switching between running programs. At the top of the Start menu you've got a list of the last 5 or 6 things you started up, and it's easy enough to go back to them and bring them up instantly. But if anything longer ago than the last 6, you've got to go find it all over again in the program list, scroll down and then tap on it. Compared to Symbian OS, which lets you instantly switch between running programs by selecting from a menu that's available in every single program, I just think this is a bit of an omission. And I know you can add it back in with third-party software, but I think that Windows Mobile 5.0 should really have this built in. On the multimedia front, video playback was somewhat erratic, with Media Player jumping out of full screen mode seemingly on a whim, with the 520 MHz processor struggling to handle so many pixels at once. And with the full screen option not working at all in some cases, even on the supplied example clip. So here's the example clip supplied with the MDA Pro. Tap on menu full screen and you'll see it doesn't go full screen, it carries on at exactly the same size. So small videos stay small, ones that are sized properly for the VGA screen, it can't cope with the pixel rate and it closes it down to the smaller size. You can't win. Video recordings at 320 by 240 and at 15 frames a second, which works well enough, even if it's not up to the standard of cutting-edge smartphones like the Nokia N70 and N90. Here's a clip I recorded outside earlier, firstly on the screen. Still images at 1280 by 1024 resolution are good without being particularly crisp, although quality does suffer significantly in poor light conditions. Communications are good as you'd expect in this category, with 3G data, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth support, and Internet Explorer works as well as ever. Microsoft really seem to do a good job in this department. Some people have been reporting problems moving around with a GPRS session active though, but a firmware update should resolve these issues. An interesting design, the MDA Pro and its rebadged clones, is ultimately disappointing. With a faster processor, more mature software and a proper mechanical keyboard, this could have been an absolute winner. Instead it's more of a curiosity for hardcore handheld fans and business users in a particular niche. You've probably registered the fact that from your Windows Mobile smartphone you can beam contacts to other users, other smartphones, and send them your business card that way. You can also pass on details of someone in your address book. But did you know that you can also beam calendar appointments? And if so, did you know that you can beam them to other devices which aren't Windows Mobile, for example Symbian smartphones or Palm OS devices? Let me demonstrate how easy this is in practice. We'll start off on the Today screen, tap on the Appointments line as a shortcut to Calendar, and we've got an appointment there, meeting with Brian. Now I've got a Nokia 6630 here, this is my own personal smartphone, and I'm going to beam it by Bluetooth from the Windows Mobile device to the Symbian device. Totally different operating systems, but through the magic of standards, in this case VCAL, sent over Bluetooth, it should all work. I can't use infrared, by the way, because the Symbian devices of this generation tended not to use infrared. So the first thing to do, having highlighted the appointment, meeting with Brian, is to press Menu, Beam Appointment, and on Windows Mobile 5.0 devices at least, beam does mean infrared and Bluetooth, rather than just infrared, which is very handy. It'll scan the Bluetooth devices in your vicinity. Initially they'll come up as unknown device, and then as each device signs in and gives its ID name, it'll come up with the appropriate reference. In this case, I tend to name most of my machines after the brand and the model number, so Median PC, Nokia 6630 smartphone, and so on. In this case, I'll select Nokia 6630, and you'll see that the status has changed to pending. If we now switch across to the 6630, you can see receive message from Bluetooth from Pocket PC. I'll say yes, and it'll then beep and vibrate and do what it normally does. We'll put the smartphone away, go across to the Symbian device, and you'll see there's one new message. If I bring it up on screen, you see the meeting details, and if I then choose Save to Calendar, it's now saved. So on the 6630, we'll switch to Calendar, and there we are, meeting with Brian, in at the right time, with the right alarm. You can go in either direction between modern smartphones. The V card for contacts and VCAL standard for smartphones work equally well, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to share your appointments and your addresses with all those around you. So here we are with TomTom Mobile 5, here running on a Nokia Series 60 smartphone. It's also available for Windows Mobile smartphones, and there are various competing systems like Route 66 and Copilot and so on. They all work in roughly the same way. TomTom Mobile does have the best reputation, so we'll give you a walkthrough of that. Let's start off by demonstrating what voice-guided satellite navigation is like in practice. Most of these products have a 3D-like display showing you roughly what you'd see outside the windscreen, and you can navigate to addresses, postcodes, points of interest and so on. Let's try it now, navigating to an address,
somewhere in Woodley, which is the place where we are now. It gives TomTom Mobile 5 lists some of the recent destinations. If it's not listed here, you can just start typing it in. And I don't want any of the other recent destinations in Woodley, so I'm going to type in my own. I want to travel to Larch Drive, so I'll type in L-A, there we are, Larch Drive RG5, which is the destination I wanted. It's even asking me for a house number, which shows how precise most of these products now are. We'll give it a house number, and we'll say the fastest route. And there we are, the route's now plotted. Gives you a summary. We'll tap on done, and then we'll start off driving. We can see how it works, and hopefully you can see this mirrored in the actual road junctions that appear. So here we are following the voice guided instructions, coming up to a junction.
Turn left, then at the end of the road, turn right.
And in a built-up city area, it's just invaluable. You can follow the voice instructions without taking your eyes off the road. If you come to a complex junction, you stop and look at the screen or just glance at it, and you can get an instant feel of where you have to go.
Turn left.
Turning left. The impressive thing about TomTom Mobile in particular, apart from the depth and the accuracy of the data that underlies it, is the speed of updates. As you can see, if you look at the screen, if you can pick that up, and then maybe if the camera just zooms back a bit and you see the road rolling by outside, the two are in perfect step, and the display is being updated several times a second, which is just so impressive. Now the instructions saying turn right at 250, we'll probably get the voice confirmation.
After 200 meters, turn right, then turn left.
There we go. Coming up to our turn now.
Turn right, then turn left.
And with most of these systems, if you do go wrong or find yourself up at the wrong street, it will recalculate on the fly. One of the great things about voice-guided satellite navigation is that you can trust it to go headlong into the deepest city urban complex, a rat's nest, a labyrinth of roads, and you just have absolute confidence by following the voice instructions and very occasionally looking at the display as well, that you'll get to where you want to go. Let me give you a quick browse round the interface of Mobile 5 just to give you a flavour. Apart from the Navigate 2 options, which are fairly extensive, right down to city centres, points of interest in cities, there's also options to avoid roadblocks for varying distances ahead, or to set up a travel via if you want to, say, pick up a letter from somewhere and you want to set up a complicated route. There are other ways to set up complicated routes too. There's an itinerary planning section where you can set up multiple waypoints and destinations, and it will track you through them one by one. The favourite system works really well. If you come across any point where you physically are, or if you plan ahead and find a spot on the map that you want to travel to often, you can set it up as a favourite and then get to it with 1 or 2 clicks later on. Cleverly, you can set up recent destinations and places you've been as favourites in case you forgot to mark them at the time. Also of note on the main menu is Advanced Planning and Browse Map, which lets you browse around your chosen country and plan routes even though you're not in your car or next to your Bluetooth GPS. This is a real boon.
You have reached your destination.
Thank you very much, TomTom Mobile 5. That's it for programme number 4. Do donate if you really like the show and want to support it. Thanks to all the usual suspects, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.